Hey all, this is David Ducker coming back at you, and today I'm going to be talking about advice for the new game master. So if you're new to game mastering, game mastery, running the game, this is a video for you, perhaps. You know, all of my videos are really about advice for game masters, or at least the vast majority of them. Uh, it's a very complicated, very nuanced thing. And it's tremendously entertaining to talk about and think about. But let's boil it down. Let's take all of this goodness and just try to condense it and boil it down to a few key parts. So if you're new, what you want to do is you want to go through and first of all assemble your players. So when you do this, make sure that they have the same playstyle as you, the same playstyle you want. So, you know, ask them, do you want a railroad where I run you on a story? Do you want a sandbox where you provide the momentum yourself? Do you want to hack and slash and fight most of the time? Or do you want to talk and politic and role play most of the time? You know, and any other areas you can think of that are important to you, bring it up to them. So, you know, if you really, really like magic in your game, talk to them about that and say, bring in magic. And do you like dealing with magic? You know, whatever you want, find people who share your interests. That's the first thing. So we'll make things so much easier for you in the long term. You know, and to do that, just conduct a little interview. Just be like, you know, oh hey, I'm looking for players. You're looking for a game. Let's have coffee and we'll talk about what we like. And make a friend and talk about gaming. Have a cup of coffee. It'll be awesome. It doesn't have to be like this intimidating seriousness with a questionnaire. I've seen people with questionnaires and I'm like, calm down. You're going to intimidate people. Just be relaxed. Be chill. So that's number one. Get your players. Number two is going to be provide the direction to the players and communicate. Like, okay, we've got this group of players together. You know, what do we want as a group out of this game? And one guy could be like, oh, I want to be a knight. And one guy could be like, oh, I want to be a samurai. And the other guy is like, oh, I want to be a, you know, I want to deal with political intrigue. I don't care what I play, but it has to be intrigue. And then another guy is like, I want to be an ogre. And maybe you get talking, and you're like, and you start to get ideas as a GM. You're like, okay, well, you want to be a knight, but well, what if you play a samurai instead? And he's like, oh yeah, I could get with that. That's pretty close. And you want to be an ogre. What if you play an oni instead? And we'll get politics about samurai clans, and then Oni comes in. The Oni is introducing this magical element, which I like as a GM, and we're going to do ninja, samurai, and feudal Japan. You know, so you've got a setting, or some rudiments of a setting, and you've got a story, got some rudiments of a story, and you've got a team, you know, even if it's just some rudiments of a team. Those are the three things you really need when you're prepping. A setting, where does it happen? A story, what happens? And the team, who does it happen to? So these, you know, let's start with the setting. That can be really easy to do. You know, feudal Japan, generic feudal Japan. Awesome. It can be just that simple. You got your setting. You may or may not want to elaborate on that further. I would, but you don't have to. It just makes sure every player fits in there. Don't have a Western Knight or a Viking show up because they're not going to fit. So you have to fit in with the setting if you're going to play in the game. And then your story. Your story can be very, very broad if it's a sandbox, or very, very specific if it's a railroad. So the story could be a civil war in Japan, or it could be an invasion of Japan by foreign elements, or it can be a magical catastrophe in this feudal Japanese setting. You know, so pick one big overarching storyline. So if you like magic, maybe it's this magical catastrophe is going to happen, and it's going to involve Oni, the magical ogres. So that can be really easy too. It can be very general, especially at the early stage. By far the more important and involved step is going to be making that team. Out of the 3 steps, that's the most important, I would say, long term. Because each player has to fit as this team. I mean, they have to fit the story, they have to fit the setting, but they really, really have to fit in with each other. So if you got 2 samurai and an Oni, let's say we also have a ninja and a Shaolin monk. If the samurai hate ninja, you might talk to the player who's playing that ninja and be like, okay, we can still get you in, but you need to disguise yourself. You can be disguised as a peasant archer, or you can be disguised as a Shaolin monk who's just not very good, or you can forge some documents and pretend to be a samurai, or you can be a priest, pretend to be a priest, because ninjas are great at disguise. And then the group fits. By the time he's revealed as a ninja, which could be like, he could never be revealed, or it could be like, 10 sessions down the line. But by the time he's revealed, they'll like him enough, and they'll need him enough that it doesn't matter anymore. They'll forgive him. So that's fine. So make sure they can form this team. And if there are problems, nix them right off the bat. So, there might be problems with this Oni. Maybe nobody likes Oni. Oni are these monsters, basically. They're evil spirits. So you can come in and say, well, we'll tie you in with the story, though, because you're trying to stop this magical catastrophe. So you're gonna come to these guys and be like, I'm the good Oni. You need to help me help you, and we're gonna fit you in that way. Once the story is over, there's no reason for you to be there. But because of the story, that's going to help bind the team. Right? So now we know why the Oni gets along with everyone. We know why the ninja gets along with everyone. They're a team. Now, so now theoretically, you're good to go. You can do the rest on the fly. You can make the characters and detail the place, so all the setting stuff, you can do that on the fly. The story stuff, you can do it on the fly. The team building stuff is really the stuff that you need to do beforehand. Make sure they're going to get along from day one. That's easily the most difficult part. So make sure their play styles, are compatible from a meta sense. Don't get a role player and a hack and slasher and think they're going to get along. Don't get someone who demands a railroad and someone who demands a sandbox think they're going to get along. Then make sure their characters are going to get along, and you're pretty much good to go and get the ball rolling and get started. So to me, that's like GMing in a nutshell. Make a story, make a setting, make a party, make sure they all tie together in a nice little ball, so the characters care about the story, they fit into the setting. The story depends on the characters one way or another to stop it or to help it. And it should all fit together in this really nice package. And you still have so much wiggle room, I mean, a samurai is so general. That could be any kind of character. He could be a goofball, he could be very serious, he could be a big fat guy, he could be really tiny and skinny, he could even be an archer or use a naginata or a katana. He could wear armor, not wear armor. He could be religious, non-religious, rich, poor. You can really customize your character a lot and still fit into this team. Same thing with the ninja or the Shaolin monk. I mean, think of all the different styles of kung fu that there are. what's his fighting style. Could be anything. So you can still do a lot within this framework. If you watch some of my RPG horror story videos, most of them are because the party doesn't fit together. I've just recorded like 3 or 4 of them, and I think all of them are just the party didn't get along. The GM didn't help us to get along when we planned them. Once the character is made, don't break character, right? So if they're not made to get along, they're not going to get along, and the game will suck. But that's pretty much my GM advice. Just keep it simple. A lot of people will say this is bad advice because it forces the players to do things. Forcing them to be from feudal Japan and forcing them to care about this magical catastrophe and forcing them to get along with samurai. But most players will still find something they're interested in within this framework. And, if they're not forced to do this, if you don't have a team plan, the game will just fall apart. Or it'll be way more stressful than it needs to be on the GM. You can still do it without this. It's going to be so hard. It's not going to be worth it to me. I would never be worth it to me to herd people together who don't really get along. That's work. That's not fun. I'm here to have fun, son. But that's my basic advice. Beyond that, build the setting, build the story, build the characters. But the real core of the game is the people and the characters who form the protagonists. So that's where you really need to start. And whether that's feudal samurai or whether that's Miskatonic University professors or the crew of a starship or dog fighter pilots, fighter pilot wing, or whether that's Roman legionaries, whatever it is, make sure they fit. Because if you tell them to make anything they want, and one shows up with a Roman legionary, and one shows up with a fighter pilot, and one shows up with a Shaolin monk, and one shows up with a lizard man who eats humans, you're going to have problems getting them to form this team. And without a team, you can't explore a story. You can't explore a setting. The team has to come first. So that's my long ramble, my beginning advice on GMs. My other advice, watch all my videos. Check out Wood, WWAD. Some of his earlier videos were very good. Check out all kinds of sources, but at the core, you got to think the setting, the story, and the protagonist. That's what you need to build your foundation upon. So I'm going to sign out now. I hope everybody has a good day, though. Cheers.